Hello students, welcome to Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. I remain your literature teacher, and today we want to look at the topic, elements of a plot.
Eko Learners Support, a support program of the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education for WAEC and NECO candidates.
As we continue in this class, we would look at a question that can be asked on one of these elements, all right, or any of these elements. Now, the first element we have here is an exposition. Exposition. Now, what's an exposition? The exposition provides background information, usually events that happened before the story began. Okay, so I'm sure that you have seen a lot of movies and even read a lot of plays. There are some movies that will try to tell you what has happened sometime before, something like a prologue in drama. Okay, and those things will now form the basis, the background, or the information that you need to know so that you can have a proper understanding of what goes on in the text later, especially in novels. All right? So the exposition is just like a background information. Now, we also have another, which is called conflict. Now, when you hear of the word conflict, I know that you often attribute it to fights, destroying things, people having, problems with each other or with one another. But the conflict is the primary problem that drives the plot of the story. Often a main goal for the main character to achieve or overcome. It could be physical, abstract, or even internal. Okay? Now, when you talk of conflict really means there is a problem. And then this problem requires a solution in this story. If you look at Once Upon an Elephant, for example, there is an underlying conflict in the text. And that is the fact that there is somebody that is close to the king Akinjobi who has done something very bad, very terrible. He has started sleeping with the king's wives and has even had children from the king's wife. And now he wants to install one of his children as the king while the older king is still alive. What a taboo. And now this evil forms the basis for the development of the plot. Okay? Now that conflict is that is the problem that needs to be dealt with now. We know that there is going to be serious problem in the state or in the village if this man continues to be the king. As a matter of fact, the conflict can span from the beginning of the text to a certain point in the text, as we will continue to look at. Now, we can have physical conflict when a man is in conflict with himself. It's called internal conflict. That means he's not happy with some things that are going on in his life and he tries to fight them. You can see the picture here. That's a man who has a lot of questions in his head. He's struggling to come out of that problem. All right? And so we say that he has an internal conflict. Okay? And we can see here, this one happens between man and man. A person can be in conflict with nature. A person can be in conflict with the gods or the spirits. It depends on how the pyramid of the universe operates around that text. All right? So we can see we have external conflict where we have character versus character. We have character versus the society, just like the text, the novel, The Invisible Man, where the narrator is constantly in conflict with the society where he finds himself. And then we also have character versus nature. Man can be angry at nature. For instance, in the poem B.C. Poplars by Gerard Manley Hopkins, we see that the poet persona was not happy with what is going on in the society, especially what is going on about nature. Things are, trees are being, cut down or fell indiscriminately, and he is not happy. So this conflict rises against nature itself. Now, we also have internal conflict, like I've mentioned, that is when a character is not at peace with himself over a certain matter. Now, let's look at another, which is climax. Now, that's another point of the novel. Now, when the story rises, or the action rises, it continues to rise and gets to a point. They call it the turning point. Nothing is the same after this point, and a lot of changes are happening in the story. Now, things are beginning to change in the story, a lot of things. Now, at the climax is the tensest part, the point where actions have become very tense. And in fact, the audience or the readers are already afraid and probably seriously scared of what might happen next. Okay? Now, we have the falling action. The falling action are the events that leads to the resolution. Those are the events that follows immediately after the climax. Now, it is important for you to know that after the climax, a lot of things begin to happen that leads to the resolution. As a matter of fact, this is where catharsis is introduced. Catharsis simply means the purgation of feelings or powerful emotions. So at the point where pity is aroused, and then the emotions of the writer is beginning to be washed off. Okay, that's what we refer to as catharsis. When catharsis is introduced, it means that a resolution is in place or a resolution is nearby. Okay, that means the problem or the conflict that started at the beginning is about to be resolved. All right, and so falling action embodies everything that happens immediately after that point, that climax. Okay, and then the catharsis itself. Now, we also have denouement or resolution. Denouement or resolution. Now, the resolution is the end of the story, which could be happy or tragic. For the Aristotelian fashion of the linear plot, where you have beginning, middle, and end. Of course, we know that all he supports is tragedy, that the end of the play should be tragic. Okay? But we also have comedies. We have other kinds of play or stories where the story ends happily. Now, that end part is what we refer to as denouement or resolution. And there, a sense of closure or ending is created in the reader. All right, now let's look at a practice question. How is conflict in marriage portrayed in the novel Second Class Citizen by Buchi Emecheta? How is conflict in marriage portrayed in the novel Second Class Citizen by Buchi Emecheta? This is also a 2024 WAEC question. And if you don't really understand what conflict is, you might not be able to answer this question properly. First is to be able to define conflict. Now, don't forget that your first paragraph must tell us a little bit about the story, Second Class Citizen. The story of a young girl who, from childhood to adulthood, has faced different levels of discrimination, gender, even racial discrimination, and has been portrayed as a second-class person in the society, whether in the society of the blacks or the white society as she found herself in England. Okay? And then you tell us a little bit about how her husband was the major bone or thorn in her flesh. And this would have helped you to present a little bit about the story. Then you go ahead to talk about the themes, the central themes of this novel. Now, after mentioning the themes of the novel, it is now important for you to identify those areas of conflict in Ada's marriage. Please do not miss out the key words. They said, how is conflict in marriage, not in the text, but in marriage, portrayed in the novel? So it means that we are looking at the marriage of people, specific marriages. So let's look at some ideas that you can draw The novel portrays conflict through the deeply flawed marriage of Ada and Francis. And it highlights the issues of gender inequality or societal expectations and the struggle for personal independence. These are major themes that you will see in the text. So, having highlighted these themes and given us a background to the story, you would have done your first paragraph. Okay? Now, conflict is portrayed as a result of rebellion against male oppression. Ada does not like the second-class life Francis has created for them in London, so she complains. Don't forget that Ada was the one who sponsored Francis to travel to England so that he could continue his accounting education and, in furtherance of his accounting career. And the expectation is that when Francis is through, he comes and take her and her children to London or to England, and then help her to also pursue her own dreams. But this happens. She traveled to England, but what she got was not what she was expecting. Francis had had gotten an apartment in a very small place in a particular place called North Finchley, and then around that area, she has seen that only black people are there. Only black people stay in that community, and apart from that, the room is small. The house is not the type that she wanted or she wants. So she confronts Francis and says that this is not, you have created a second-class life for us. And Francis gets angry because she has her own ambition. She has her own idea. She has things that she wants to pursue as a woman of herself. But this has been restricted. And that's the first period we saw conflict. Francis would not permit her to raise her own ideas or her own vision against or over what he believes. All right? And so we began to see that a lot of things happen. Francis will beat her, will only have sex with her when he wants, and she must be ready. Allows her to pay all the bills. She works and collects all the money from her. Fights against even her children. Cheats on her with Trudy of the Daily Minders, and then does all manner of evils that shows that he does not permit the kind of life that Ada has chosen, which is an assertive one that wants to pursue a dream or even make something big out of a dream. We saw when he destroyed Ada's book, Ada's manuscript that she was writing. And that was even about one very great thing that has happened to Ada. She has been able to write a book titled The Bride Price. And she has showed it to her friends, and her friends said, oh, wow, this is fantastic. And then Francis went ahead, picked the book, and burnt it off. That was the height of it. And those are conflicts generated out of, first of all, the idea of the assertiveness of a woman or the struggle for identity. And then struggle against all manner of discrimination. Okay? And then we also have womanism, love for her children. She fights with Francis many times because Francis has now transferred the aggression even to Vicky, her children. And this was not good. In fact, one of the reasons she eventually leaves the house. Left Francis, and even the conflict even continues in the court of law, where Francis pretends as though he never knew Ada and her family. That's pathetic. So those are elements, those are things that you could write on, to explain the conflict in that marriage. All right? But we also saw another marriage. As for Janet, she's submissive to Babalola. And the reason is only because of her child. Don't forget that Janet was picked up. She's half Indian, half England. And she was staying with one of her uncles. And because of her promiscuous lifestyle, she got pregnant, and her uncle sent her out. She was living, on the street. In fact, Babalola picked her up in a cabin, in a phone call cabin, and took her, decided to help her. But we did not see much of conflict in that marriage because she had a plan. She was smart. She just wanted peace for her child. And that is why it seemed as if there was no conflict, even though Babalola abused her a lot. Babalola, gave her to her friends, to his friends as, for fun, for sexual pleasure, and it continued like that on and on. So this would have given you a hint on how to answer the question, but I want you to go ahead and develop your own answers yourself. All right. So thank you for listening. If you have questions or comment, please reach us on our social media handle displayed on the screen.
Acing your WAEC and NECO examinations has been made easy by the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education with the Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO Candidates television program. Join seasoned teachers as they take you through these core subjects, targeting the exact syllabus of WAEC and NECO. Watch Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates through these social media platforms to access more educational content and give their feedback. Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. Pass your examinations with flying colors.